I have with me the Executive Director of the International Energy Agency, Fatih Birol here. Many thanks for speaking with NDTV, sir. My first question is with regards to the Development Ministers meeting that took place in Varanasi, the G20 meeting. Now, issues like climate change, sustainability, poverty, or poverty alleviation, I should call it, and development. These are largely intrinsically linked to the developing and poorer world. And the impact will also be felt most by these vulnerable countries. Then how does this channel onto a platform of the world's biggest economies and richest countries, the G20 platform? How do we aim to channel that? And do you see India being effectively taking the voice of the global south, something that it has taken the onus for?
Thank you. I am attending to many international summits. Only a few weeks ago in Hiroshima, upon the invitation of Prime Minister Kishida, with President Biden, President Macron, Prime Minister Modi, we discussed energy and climate issues as well. But here, I found the meeting yesterday chaired by Minister Jay Shankar very, very important, because energy and development are so much interwoven. Energy is the lifeblood for economic development. But when I look at the global energy picture today, as I mentioned all the ministers of G20 yesterday, one issue is very important, which is the inequality. There are lots of big differences between the haves and have-nots here. Let me give you one example. Electricity. Today in Africa, every second person, they don't have electricity. It's a major issue. Social economic issue at all. It was a big problem 20 years ago in many countries, but China fixed it first, India fixed it recently, and now Africa has a big problem. And when we look at the solar today, 40% of the solar radiation in the world comes to Africa, and the solar is the cheapest source of electricity generation. Yet the amount of solar generated in the entire African continent is equal to the solar electricity generated in Netherlands. Think about the world map. How big is the African continent is, and how small the size of Netherlands is, and this is really not acceptable. I told this to the ministers, and when it comes to climate as well, it is an issue of not today, it's an issue of last 100 years, and the rich countries, when they develop, they put a lot of carbon in the atmosphere, and there is a very little room now left for the developing countries, and I hope that now the rich countries support the emerging countries, developing countries, to access to clean energy so that they can develop with using clean energy sources. And here I am grateful to India, taking the leadership of the global south and pushing the rich countries and also international financial institutions to be much more prominent, much more forceful to support the clean energy in emerging countries.
So India wants to make the climate agenda one of the major focus in G20 as well. But do you see it going any further till there is real commitment from the West on climate finance and loss and damage funding? I mean, that seems to be not really heading in the right direction as fast as it should.
You are completely right. We are not seeing yet the commitment from the advanced economies, but I am very much hoping that the countries in North America, the countries in Europe, Japan, and the rich Middle East countries, they come together and commit themselves in Dubai in the COP28 that they are ready to support emerging countries' clean energy transition, because it is once ethical, and there's a responsibility, historical responsibility. Second, it is also in their own interest, because the emissions going to atmosphere from Jakarta or from Bombay or from Detroit or from Venice, it has the same effect on everybody. Even if Europe or North America bring the emissions to almost zero, if the other countries wouldn't bring the emissions down, they will be affected. Europeans, Americans will be affected. So it is in everybody's interest that rich countries and the World Bank, international institutions support the clean energy in developing countries. And the first test, main test, will be in Dubai, November this year.
Coming to the issue of the energy crisis that we are seeing now, the G20 platform, we've seen differences of opinion both in the finance minister's track as well as in the foreign minister's meeting of the G20 leaders. There was a point put by Russia specifically saying that you can't, it is unfair to tie up the energy as well as food insecurity currently only with the war in Ukraine. How do you see this going forward? Because the summit, the G20 summit, is just a couple of months away now, and India has this big onus of getting a consensus going. But there are grave differences at the moment, and the world still faces an energy crisis as well.
Definitely so. And India took over the G20 presidency at a time when the world was going, and still is going, very difficult geopolitical tests and a period, to be honest with you. And we will see a lot of discussions between major producers, between Russia and the Europeans and the others. But at the IEA, we look at the numbers. When you look at the numbers, the energy prices were already going up slightly, but after 24th of February, they have skyrocketed energy prices because of the geopolitical tensions. Now they are coming down a bit, but it is very obvious that the energy crisis are hurting the economies, but mainly those countries who are relying on imports of energy, especially developing countries. It's not the Europeans, it's not the Americans, it's mainly the energy import in developing countries such as the African countries, Asian countries, including India or some Latin American countries.
So how do you see India's role in this crisis? As you said, the countries that import energy are the ones facing the biggest problem at the moment. Do you see India having been able to balance its own interest well with what is happening currently in the geopolitical situation? Because India took a stand that it will continue importing fuel from Russia as well, importing energy from Russia as well.
So, when we look at the situation, as I mentioned, India took over the G20 presidency at a very difficult time when it comes to geopolitics. But in addition to difficulties, India had some responsibility as G20, but also this created some opportunities for India as well. Opportunities in terms of energy, having the Russian oil at a discounted prices, which is a relief for the Indian energy, because Indian economy is very much relying on the imported energy. It is bills. But having said that, as a true friend of India, I can tell you that this relief is good, but this is not a structural relief. It's a time, 6 months, 1 year, or maybe a bit longer. If India wants to reduce its reliance on imported oil, India needs to look at the alternatives, from moving to electric cars to using renewable energies much more strongly.
What about Europe? This winter, will they be better off as far as the energy crisis is concerned?
I think Europe, in my view, made a major historical mistake. In fact, two mistakes, if I may say, when we look at the European energy strategies. Europe took a decision, and since 40 years, for it is almost all energy sources relied on one single country. This can be Russia, this can be any other country, but in the energy, you don't put all the eggs in one basket. Anything can happen. So this is one mistake. The second mistake for Europe was getting a big chunk of its energy from nuclear power, and Europe, for ideological reasons, turned its shoulder back to nuclear power. As a result of these two historical mistakes, Europe went through a very difficult time last winter, and we have seen that many European industries did suffer. Having said that, Europe was still successful putting the right policies in place, lots of renewables, lots of electric cars, lots of LNG from other countries, from United States, much more gas from Norway, Algeria. They were able to go through this. What helped Europe a lot is that last winter was very, very warm, exceptionally warm. And coming winter, Europe put a lot of gas now in the storage to be on the safe side. But if the winter is much harsher than the normal winters, then still there may be some challenges for Europe. So it is too early Europe to declare a victory, in my view.
On the back of the shocks that we've seen in the global economy, starting from COVID-19 pandemic onwards and then Ukraine, what is the status of the global economic recovery? What do you see in months to come now?
So when I look at the energy crisis, what happened 24th of February, I think the response of many economies around the world was in a, for many, surprising way. Because what we have seen, many countries have pushed the alternatives to oil, gas and coal. Solar energy, incredible growth. In 1 year, the entire world at about 40% of solar. Whatever we built in the last 30 years, we built 40% of it only in 1 year. Or let me tell you, last year, of all the power plants built in the world, 80% was renewable energy. It is a big number. Only 20% was coal and gas and the others. 80% renewables. Electric cars growing very strongly. 2 years ago, 1 out of 25 cars sold in the world was electric. 1 out of 25 2 years ago. And this year, 1 out of 5 cars sold is electric. It's going very strongly. So what we are seeing, that the clean energy is moving fast, and faster than many people think, producers, consumers and others.
I want to ask you a specific question with regards to, once again, G20, because I understand that Prime Minister Modi wants the International Energy Agency to put out a report at the Leaders Summit on life. So what will that report entail, and what do we expect the leaders, when they have that report with them, to do about environment, lifestyle and everything that is intrinsically linked to it?
This was the perhaps the biggest surprise, or the good thing for all the ministers yesterday in Varanasi, because I share some of the early findings of the life mission of Prime Minister Modi. A few months ago in Bengaluru, I had a meeting with the Prime Minister Modi. He said to me, International Energy Agency is a very credible institution. Why don't you look at if the life is implemented globally, how would it change the world? So we look at it. I built a big group of experts from different nationalities with different backgrounds, and I shared some of the preliminary analysis with the ministers yesterday. For example, if the life mission is adopted globally, we can reach our climate goals much faster than we can ever imagine. If we change the behavior of the consumers, we can keep a lot of money in our pockets, and we can create millions of new jobs as a result of Life Initiative. Many ministers were very interested. After the meeting, they came to me, they wrote emails asking for the numbers, and the final results we are going to present to the G20 leaders, and I think it will be a very nice present of India to the international community.
Mr. Fatih Birol, many thanks for speaking with NDTV. That we all thank you.
Thank you very much.